Welcome to That's Inclusive, where we talk about disability and what it means to live a full life engaging in our communities. What does that look like, and how can we work together to make our world a more inclusive place?
Hi, everyone, and welcome to That's Inclusive, conversations with the New Hampshire Council on Developmental Disabilities. Today, we're going to be talking with Stephanie Patrick from the Disability Rights Center, New Hampshire, and Kelly Nye Lengerman from the Institute on Disability at UNH. And we're going to be talking about something called the Stop Special campaign. So, first of all, I'm Isadora Rodriguez-Legendre. I work at the New Hampshire Council on Developmental Disabilities, and I'd love to do some brief introductions with you ladies.
Great. Thank you so much for having me, Isadora. I'm so excited to be here. So I'm Stephanie Patrick. I'm the Director of Disability Rights Center, New Hampshire, and we're New Hampshire's protection and advocacy agency. We provide legal advocacy for people with all kinds of disabilities across the state, and we're really excited to partner with you all for the Stop Special campaign.
Great. Kelly.
Hi, Isadora and Stephanie.
Hi.
This is Kelly. And again, I serve as the Director of the Institute on Disability at the University of New Hampshire. And the IOD, the Institute on Disability, is New Hampshire's designated UCED, or University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities. And we work together with the DRC and the DD Council as the Developmental Disabilities Act partners here in New Hampshire. And our role is unique because as a university center, we are really charged with conducting research and evaluation, community service, dissemination and outreach, and training and technical assistance on sort of all things related to disability policy and services. And so we've been in existence at UNH since 1987.
Wow, that's a long time. So together, our 3DD Act partner network agencies work on a number of different collaboratives, work groups, and projects. One of those projects is Stop Special. Would someone like to tell us a little bit about what that project is?
Yeah, I will start us off here. So Stop Special is a campaign that audience members will be able to see very soon if they're not already looking at it already. And this was an initiative that came out of the idea of, as we listened to our constituents as DD Act partners, we heard more and more people with disabilities and family members and allies talking about how certain words were very disrespectful, very triggering, very outdated. And that term that we heard a lot and very consistently was the term special. And special is used as a euphemism a lot in our industry and in the work that we do. And as we really paused and sort of reflected, it was like this was a word that didn't feel respectful or representative or inclusive. And so we came together with our colleagues, some community members, and each other to say, how do we actually contribute to changing the conversation and helping educate people both about the word special and just advancing inclusive language?
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about how language is really important and how important it is for the community itself to determine what words and terms are appropriate for describing them and themselves. And so this seems to be a very grassroots-driven movement, right? We're hoping a movement to really listen to what people have to say and use words that are not going to set them apart in some way or make them excluded in some way. Do you have anything to add, Stephanie?
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I think if we look back on the history of language, it is always changing and shifting. So language is not a static thing. The words that were commonplace to be used when I was a kid, some of them we don't use anymore because people have clearly said, I don't want to use that. And I think, most clearly about the R word and the use of the R word and how that's really changed in our culture now. And people understand that that is not a term that people with disabilities want, that anyone wants to use to describe people with disabilities. And I think this is just a new opportunity to look critically at the languages we use now and listen to people with disabilities about what they want and need.
Great. So how do we hope to accomplish that?
Well, we're going to start out by starting a campaign, and that's why I'm glad we're able to highlight it today. We have a website, that hopefully will be out by the time the podcast comes out. And what's that, Kelly?
It's www.stopspecial.org.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and so we'll be asking people to actually pledge to stop using the word special whenever they can. We recognize, I think, that this is going to be a long-term change.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as Disability Rights Center in particular, we recognize that special is used throughout the law. It's used to describe programs and systems and grants, and we're gonna really have to think critically about when we use it and when we don't, but make a concerted, direct effort not to use it unless we have to, and to call it out and say, this is not what people with disabilities want. We don't want to use special education. We don't want to use special needs. We want to use other terms that are more that people with disabilities want.
Yeah, I think for me, I've definitely found myself getting, and it's a habit, it's a practice, right? Like anything else, just getting in the habit of, instead of saying special education, saying something like educational supports and services for students with IEPs or students with disabilities. You know, if you're referring to people with disabilities, don't use a euphemism. They know they have a disability, and they want the respect and the dignity for you to recognize that they may just need a little bit of support to be able to do the same things that you and I do.
I think I would add to that, too, is a really central focus of this campaign is also really educating people and creating space to have conversations. Because as you both pointed out, so many of these words are embedded in everyday language of how we talk. They're in our laws. They're in our programmatic language. And so it's really hard to extract. And so part of having a campaign like this is just getting people to have these individual conversations, these group conversations organizationally, and for people to also feel empowered to say, other people have been thinking that this word doesn't fit, doesn't represent me for a long time, and sort of giving space to have both opportunity and voice to share of like, there's a different way. And I think all of us agree that we don't have the perfect direct answer because there is not a one-size-fits-all answer to this conversation, but that we as partners really want to take the opportunity to build conversation and community around the use of inclusive language.
Yeah, one of the things I really love most about this campaign is that we are kind of stepping back and elevating the voices of people with disabilities. And on the website, there are different videos where you can hear from people with lived experience about what the word special or being called special has meant for them and to them, and how they really find it disempowering in a lot of ways. And so that's one way that we expect to hear from people with disabilities and have heard from people with disabilities about what this means to them. It's not something we're doing for people because we think it's in their best interest. It's the community itself that's driving this.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. And I would just put a plug in that if people are listening and they're interested and they want to talk about this, either through a video, they're really short and pretty easy to record, or through just a statement and a picture, or either of those, we would welcome more of that, because we want to be the way for people with disabilities to speak their own words, make their own communications in whatever way works for them about how they feel about this.
And I think the other piece that's both exciting at a local level here in the state of New Hampshire, but also even thinking broader is, each one of us as partners has national associations and groups and colleagues that exist in every state and territory around the United States, is that, this was sort of birthed here in New Hampshire, or we were trying to create space to have these conversations and do this education and outreach, that it isn't just about New Hampshire. Like, this is actually bigger than all of us. I think first and foremost, these are the communities we care about most in our own state, but we really want this, and we believe this to resonate with so many other places, because we have colleagues and partners and people with disabilities nationwide that have been sharing this. It's just sort of interesting that even at this day and age, we as a group have not found any other sort of collective action around this yet. And so the fact that it's coming from New Hampshire and our community is exciting.
What else is important to know about this initiative? I would ask the group here.
I think one of the things that I think about a lot, and I think this is, we've had conversations about this and we're going to have more conversations about this, is that this campaign is not about shaming people, making people feel bad, trying to rewrite history. I think all of us recognize, and just as Stephanie mentioned about the history of language, is that we're on this interesting continuum, and that when we know better, we do better. And that there are still people and groups and organizations that are going to use and have special as part of their identity. It doesn't make them individually bad. Or again, this campaign is not about that sort of public shame or repudiation. It really is about educating and having conversation. So I think that's one thing that I would really want to convey to our colleagues and partners and community members, is to say we're trying to facilitate conversations to move our language and our inclusion forward.
Yeah, I think that is very true and important. I think another thing that we're really looking for is for people to pledge, not to pledge to be perfect, because I still say it and I catch myself, and sometimes I don't even catch myself, but I still say it, but to pledge to be really thoughtful about using the word special and to try to make that difference. And so there's also another thing on our website will be an opportunity for individuals to pledge to make that difference and to help to spread the word about this to other places and organizations. And so we're really looking for people, organizations, groups, advocates to come and join us and say, want to make this commitment to be able to make this change, and I'm willing to take that pledge, and then to stay with us as we send email alerts and we have social media planned out as we try to make this happen over the course of the next 5 years, 10 years. The R word's been around for a long time. It was a long time before it really got to be part of the regular everyday vernacular, but it did, and I'm really excited and confident that we'll get there too.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's so important to recognize that change happens really slowly, right? And that it's one person's experience, one person's story sometimes that is that catalyst to really starting people talking about things and then taking action around something. And so we are also interested in having other groups and organizations take action around this and really become part of that conversation, part of that, what I would refer to as that gentle nudge in the direction of listening to people with disabilities about what they want and see language that's supportive and also that recognizes their value, their dignity, and their strengths.
And I think the tricky thing about that, and what I would add to that, is that just as we're on this sort of long historical trajectory about language, there's also this continuum about how people want or can use the campaign. You you phrased that, Isadora, the gentle nudge. I think there are many of our colleagues, people with lived experience, our friends, our communities, that are like, no, we don't need a gentle nudge. We need a hard push to be like, this should change. This is how I want to be referred to, referenced. This is the way I'm using words and language, and I want you to do the same.
Yeah.
And so I think it's sort of a both and I think, again, it's our community is very diverse and broad. But our goal and our hope and kind of design of this is also not only meeting people where they're at, but then, again, creating some tools and opportunities so you can do the gentle nudge or you can do the hard, like, hey, we're going this way now. And we recognize, I think there's going to be lots of different people's groups and communities that are going to be in different places, but it's kind of designed in a way of like, wherever you're at right now, we'll meet you there.
Yeah. And I definitely think that in my experience, certainly there have been individuals that don't see an issue with that word. And it's important to recognize that for those individuals that maybe this movement doesn't resonate. I think it would be important to say to those folks that there are people for whom this word really is disempowering and really kind of works to continue segregation and social isolation in a way that not everyone with a disability is going to experience, right? And so a lot of the folks that we work with have intellectual or developmental disabilities, and they have seen how this word is used like almost like a good buddy or a way to go champ, right? And really kind of to belittle and infantilize people with disabilities in a way that we know today is not appropriate, because adults are adults and they are capable of making their own choices and living their own life and following their own dreams and goals. They just need the supports to be able to do that.
But everybody needs those kinds of supports. That's the thing. It's not like I didn't need those supports when I turned 18 and I had no idea how to, wash my clothes or like change the oil in my car or even where to go to have someone do that. Yeah. Like everyone needs supports in different parts of their lives, and making people with disabilities feel different because of that is not helpful to them or to anyone.
Right.
I think the other thing too that I think about as we're having this conversation here too is that sometimes with things that we want to see changed, whether it's about policy or practices or experiences, is that one of the things we have the most control over is the words that we use. Yeah. And yet it can be one of the most powerful things, because the words that we use impact of how we think, they impact how we feel, they impact our decisions, they impact the other people around us. And so again, we hope that people also walk away from this feeling empowered in the sense of that this is something we can do something about at a very individual level, and that we can do something about it at broader levels too. But it often starts with who we are and how we use language as people.
Right.
Yeah, the other thing that I think has been interesting is that some people haven't really had an opportunity to think about this. Mm-hmm. As we've been talking about this with some advocates to say, what do you think? Do you want to be a part of this? Do you want to help us with our videos and testimonials? I think that I've heard from some people, I don't know really, and that's okay too.
Right.
This is an opportunity for you to think about it and decide what you think, and if you want to support something like this or you don't. Those are all okay choices. They're fine choices for anyone to make. But we do want to encourage people to be thinking about it.
Yeah, that's a great point. That there's not really one size fits all or a right answer, get on board or get off the train.
Right.
We're really interested in just moving the conversation along and having people think about something that maybe they haven't really had an opportunity to do before, and figure out what works for them.
I think a little bit about, we were talking earlier about how deeply the word special is embedded in in the work that we do in the communities that we operate in. I also think about the use of the term as an identity for groups of professionals. So when we think about, again, I'm going to use the term special educators, they have worked in a career in an industry, dedicated and focused on improving the life and the quality of educational services for students with disabilities. Like, that is very professional, honorable, noble, and an essential ingredient in community and society. And so I think, too, this challenges the way that we think about that. And as I was talking about earlier of not wanting to, create divisiveness or cancel culture or things like that, but recognizing that there are groups of professionals that have that also embedded in their title. But this conversation is for them too. And again, a handful of the folks that we've continued to kind of talk and shop these ideas with also say that they, as an industry and as educators, are thinking about these things too. I think that'll be an interesting thing to watch as that also sort of moves forward in the next 3, 5, 10, 15 years. Because even if we think about the kind of journey with the R word, the last thing to change was the federal legislation with Rosa's Law. We had made decisions as individuals, community, and society well before, the federal government and legislation caught up to that. And so I think many of us do hope that a similar trajectory will happen with the use of this word too, recognizing that it's a long game, it's deeply embedded, but that there are things that we can do as individual members, professionals, to to again think critically about how that is representative of us today or no longer representative of us today.
Yeah, sometimes it's those professionals, right, that can be the strongest allies too in helping move legislation and policy. And, when I think about educational policy or even civil rights policy that uses euphemisms or words that are intentionally portraying people as different, less than, needing help or support, to be able to essentially justify services or funding or things like that. It really does sometimes become those folks who are most in those leadership roles, in those decision-making positions, that are able to be the catalyst, be the impact on that change. And so hopefully we can get some people to really understand how the Stop Special campaign really aligns with the vision of the world we want to see.
Right. I mean, I think it's important that changing how you describe yourself, if you're a special educator or a special needs parent, doesn't mean that you're not valuable or that your contributions are not important and you're not doing really good work. It doesn't mean to undermine that at all. I think sometimes when people think about how they describe themselves, it's hard to think about changing that because it's been part of a narrative for a very long time. But it doesn't. I just want people to recognize that it doesn't mean that your work isn't good, that your thing isn't valuable, or that you were making bad choices before. Mm-hmm. It just means that now we've learned some lessons about how we're going to do things moving forward, and we hope that people will be able to join us to be able to really say, I've done this for a long time. I recognize that this is not what I want the future to be for myself, for my profession, for the people that I'm working with.
Yeah, and then take action, right? Yeah. Either sign the pledge, or talk to other people in your field or in your family or in your community about this topic, and just have those conversations, and encourage people to tell their stories. We talk about how advocacy is really the harnessing of people's stories to be able to impact change and be influencing how people see things that don't personally impact their lives.
I think one of the great things, kind of again, coming full circle to our different roles as part of the DD network, that is really kind of at the heart of what we try to do is blend education and advocacy together for the most powerful, impactful messages. That sometimes stories are the most important, sometimes education or data is the most important, but when you can find a topic, an issue where you really can pull those things together, that can lead to some of the greatest change. And again, I think we're talking a lot here about the hope of sort of what comes next with this campaign. And I think it really remains to be seen, because part of this is sort of reflecting back to the communities that we're a part of, right, to say, where's it going to go next? Like, we've used some of our expertise and resources to create a sort of a framework based on the lived experience feedback that we've received. But where it goes next is kind of up to all of the rest of us.
Right. And kind of putting it back in the hands of the people most impacted, right? And those voices, those disability voices that have something to say about this.
So maybe we want to remind people of the website, because that's where people should go, right?
Yes, stopspecial.org. That's where you can go and read some stories, get a little bit more background, take the pledge. There's some additional language resources on there as well. And again, we hope to continue to build out the website, some social media presence. And we really want to also welcome and encourage other people to apply it in the ways that's most meaningful to them. So again, yes, we created it in New Hampshire. Yes, we're the DD Act partners, but it doesn't preclude anybody from another state, another community, another organization, another person, someplace else in the country or the world that says, this, I want to carry this message forward. I want to put this on my media. I want to embed this in my newsletter, tell my story. That's what we want to happen, is to sort of say, yes, take it into the universe and make it have impact and meaning for you.
Yeah, That's great. So thank you, ladies, for coming out and talking with us on our podcast. We hope you check out the website and keep listening.
Do you want to spell out the website? I think maybe for accessibility, you might want to insert that in somewhere.
Okay.
I just wondered.
Yes. Yeah. So it's stopspecial.org.
STOPSPECIAL.org.
Great. Thank you. And that'll be available in the transcript as well. So check it out. And thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much,
Yes,
Isadora.
thank you.
This was enjoyable.
Thank you for joining us today. I'm Vanessa Blaze, and this was a production of the New Hampshire Council on Developmental Disabilities, produced by Isadora Rodriguez-Legendre and Vanessa Blaze, with many thanks to Josh Hardy and the rest of the crew here at Concord TV. We love to have guests with differing perspectives. These views are personal and do not necessarily represent those of the DD Council.